Welcome to Go All In, the podcast for the underdog entrepreneurs who didn't wait for permission and didn't quit when things got hard. I'm Ann Fong, and each month I sit down with founders, risk takers, and underdogs to talk about what it really takes to beat the odds in business. Welcome to Go All In, beating the odds in business. I'm so excited to have our next guest, Josh Fleener, owner of Pest Pro. Get it right?
Pest Pros Pest Solutions.
Okay. But for sure, I say Pest Pro. It's long. I'm so excited to have you because I've known you for a little while now and I've already heard your journey and just wanted to share it because I've been so inspired by you and your journey. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm super honored to be on this and surprised that you would ask me. I'm sure you
Surprise.
have such a huge list of quality people to have on here, so I'm very honored.
Well, thank you. But you're on the very top, not only because of like the business and everything, but we have also had a chance to work together in different roles, like a community charitable role. And you were just like that's definitely why you're in the top. And we'll get to talk a little bit more about that later. But let's talk about this journey. Okay, so you're the owner of Pest Pro
Yes.
for short. And let's just okay, where are you at now? Like, let's talk about numbers, like statistics of how many employees, locations.
So we have 65 employees. We have 4 branches, a branch in the Bay Area out of Concord, but it services the greater Bay Area. We're in North Bay, South Bay, as far as Gilroy, pretty heavy in San Francisco. But we're headquartered here in Sacramento, and we're very deeply rooted in the Sacramento area. So with any type of expansion, we're not going to get away from our Sacramento roots. So we're
Right.
very focused here.
And so, what are the other locations? Sacramento,
Yuba
San Francisco,
City.
Yuba
So
City.
Yuba City, and then we have a Roseville location.
Okay. And so, okay, so how did this start? Like, how did it start? One is Sacramento, first location in Sacramento.
First, yes, it was over off Auburn Boulevard, Auburn and Madison area, in this little tiny closet that we rented out.
And did you like grow up as a young boy? Like, I'm going to be pest control
No,
king.
no. Hey, I didn't realize though I was training for it when I was a kid because I grew up really poor. We dealt with a lot of pest issues and single mom, and I was the designated pest killer, I guess.
And I mean, I still remember, and my kids now, like when we see them, some of them are like ew, and the other ones are like stomping on them.
Yeah.
So we all have that experience. But no, like, how did you get into pest control, like as a
Just
career?
like anybody who lands in pest control, it was by accident.
Uh huh.
So I didn't intend to do that. Like I was going to be a several different things. I could never decide what I was going to be. I grew up in a rougher household. There wasn't a whole lot of direction on where like where we were going to go in life. There wasn't a whole lot of counseling for that either, or a whole lot of modeling on what that should look like.
Yeah.
And at one point, I very strongly wanted to be a firefighter,
Hmm.
and
Did you pursue that?
I did, and I scored very high on the test, on the physical and the written test. But then life kind of pulled me in a different direction.
As it always
Yes,
does.
so I was a little disappointed about that, but there were choices I was making in life that led a different direction, and I ended up doing some landscape work for a summer, and I started taking night courses in landscape design
Yeah.
and
Was that like at a
horticulture and
community college, or is that like?
yeah, community ARC.
Oh,
So
shout out to ARC. I went there too.
yeah, and I attended Sierra for a bit for the firefighter stuff, some of the stuff they had out there. But I was looking at very young. I grew up in a rougher family. I kind of felt like the black sheep in my family because I was so different than everybody else. It was fairly dysfunctional. So I really just craved having a family. So I met a little bit older woman. She had 3 kids, and at 19 years old, we got together, and and we got married a few years after, and I was dad, and I had 3 kids I had to raise, and or I got to raise, and I love these kids, and they all work for me today, which
That's
is great.
amazing.
But so I was like, I have to somehow balance night school and provide, and I needed more, so I responded to an ad where it was going to be a bit more money. It was kind of, and it would have led in a direction to where I would have got some landscape design experience, and I responded to the ad, and it was a misprint. The phone
Mm.
number was incorrect, and it was literally a pest control company. And I go, "Oh, sorry, I have the wrong number." And the guy's like, "Well, what did you call for?" And we got to talking, and he was really charismatic.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Why don't I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to just like let's just sit down and talk face to face." So I went in and I talked to him, and he talked me into moving forward with him. And it was kind of a commission based thing. So there was a salary to protect me, but I was a super competitive person too. And he
Mhm.
started talking about these things you could do to where you can make additional money and you're in control of your income. And I went,
That
all
sounds
right.
great.
Yeah. But I was super introverted. So I was very nervous about it. But I
So
had
did you have a sales job prior to? Like,
no, never. Sales terrified me, to be honest with you.
so was it always kind of like a physical you mentioned landscaping, were you always like a hands-on
I
type of
loved
guy?
hands-on. Yeah. What I liked about landscape too is I could put my headphones in and I could just get to work.
Plug in and just
And I was always like somebody I have a very active mind.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about things consistently. I'm looking to grow personally, like
I've witnessed that.
always yes. So even back then I was trying to better myself constantly. So I'm listening to like what they called back then self-help books on
Oh.
tape.
Mhm.
Which, it's personal development. It's the way I look at it now. So anyways, he talks me into coming down and I was terrified of the idea of it, but I saw the potential income wise. So I go, I have to face some of these fears. I have to step out of my comfort zone. I'm gonna have to be on a little bit more. And I did, and I actually really enjoyed helping people. I realized very quickly that people treat you like you're a superhero when you come out. When there are roaches all over the place and their kids are crying, and I mean, I have a big heart too. I walk in
Yeah.
the room and I go, "These kids are living in this. Like, I
Oh,
have to fix this."
yeah.
So I found a lot of purpose in that, and like
Mhm.
in helping people. Um,
So
but
when you met with him, you met with him and like how was that conversation of like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna be pest
He
control.
was just so fired up, he had me fired up, and I go, "I guess I'm gonna do this," and I go, I can make more money for a while, and I'll continue the night school, I'll continue going that direction because that was my passion at the time.
Mhm.
I have a creative mind and, like, being able to design it wasn't the landscape part of it necessarily, it was designing something
Mhm.
that was really drawing me.
Yeah.
So I started doing a lot of side projects, designing people's landscapes on my
Oh
own, and
wow.
I found a lot of I was exercising that creative side of my
Scratch
mind
the
with
itch
that.
in your mind, right? That you
Yes.
knew is always like, "Ah, I need to do something with it." Like, right?
Yeah.
I get that. So that's the beginning of the pest
Yeah, so
control
I ended up
journey?
there, yeah, and
And so you mentioned like a sales aspect or commission based. How I'm just curious how that works. Is when you think about pest control, you don't think about it as like sales. Like at least me, I just the image of me. I always get it
y
is. And you mentioned like a superhero cape, and that's kind of your
oh, yeah.
billboard. Like you have a superhero coming in and save the day.
Yeah, so we have this superhero that's all over our billboards and our social
Mhm.
media and everything, and it's real there's a deeper meaning to it. It's not like, "Hey, we're a
Okay.
superhero." There's a lot of meanings to it. Like I said earlier, it's like we get to step in and, like, save the day. Um, but there's a deeper meaning to it, and me being at the time, I'm learning to navigate this side of myself, and over the last year, because I know when we first met, you're like, "You're not an introvert," and, I stopped telling myself I'm an introvert, really.
Yes.
Um, I have introvert tendencies that I need to exercise, but I need to, like, manage that properly, and so I'm starting to learn I do have an extrovert side. It's just where I apply that is what matters and what rooms I'm in. So with the superhero thing, I used to find so I had to conquer my fear every day to speak to people, because whole backstory I could go
Well, you can't do
into.
sales if you're scared of pee pee. So you're not gonna
Yes.
sell anything
Well, I
if you're
also had a very
scared.
negative view of sales too, because I
Mhm.
remember my mom always talking about them like they're these used car salesmen. They're trying to get over on you. That's what
Mhm.
sales is. And so that was my perception of it. And then when I connected that, like, I'm actually helping people. So I'm not going out and selling them. I'm going out and solving a problem for them. They need me. So I'm not forcing it on anybody who doesn't need it.
I feel the exact same way. Like people think, as a personal injury lawyer, I get called ambulance chaser all the
Yeah.
time. But it's the exact same thing where I know I'm doing a good thing. I'm helping people who are in need of my help. And so at the end of the day, you take away that kind of negative connotation that have associated with it. It's like, no. And then you're able to like push it aside and do what you do and love it.
Yeah, you've changed the whole image of that 'cause, people will
Yeah.
talk to me, they're like, "Oh, you know Ann? Is she, she's like an ambulance chaser or is she really like what you see on in social media and all that?" And I go, "I've spent enough time around her. I know where her heart is, and she is there isn't anybody working harder than you in that aspect of the world,
Thank
at least
you.
in my world."
Oh, I appreciate that. Um,
The superhero thing, you want me to cover that? Oh,
yeah.
so the superhero thing is, it goes back to I would find myself completely exhausted, like mentally exhausted by the end of the day because I had to be on all day and talk to people. And it was that introvert side that because, it's like difference between introverts and extroverts typically is battery life. So you
Mm,
can be extroverted, but only for so long. Your battery starts going do 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 like this, where extroverts it just powers up. But
yeah.
later I've learned now that it's not necessarily that, it's what room I'm in and who I'm talking to because my battery life can last a lot
It's
longer
very true.
when I'm feeding it properly or I'm in the right, I'm in the right situation. But back then I didn't understand a whole lot about that. I was stepping out of my comfort zone. I was navigating a lot of things on my own mentally, um, that I didn't understand, and there weren't the resources as readily available now either, and, I hadn't yet learned how to be resourceful, find those things. So I used to tell myself every morning is, when I was putting on my uniform is like, I'm putting on my superhero costume. I'm putting it on. I'm going to be somebody else all day. And when I would tell myself that, I would put it on and I go, okay. And I would take a deep breath. I'd put it on and like, I'm going to be this different person today through the day. And then I would be on all day and I was winning sales competitions. And I was
Wow.
like, and people are like, this guy's like, how is he doing that? Cause I know who he is outside of all of
Wow.
this. But and I had a bigger purpose. I'm taking care of these kids. I'm going to make sure that they have what they need. And by the end of the day, though, I would take that off, and it was like I got hit with kryptonite. It's like I would
Mm,
just be so exhausted because I was on all day long. And back then I didn't really know how to feed that properly. I didn't know how to nourish that properly.
yeah.
So I would just be exhausted, and I would need time alone for quite a while to try kind of and regroup. And
Yes.
even on weekends, sometimes I needed a day. Like I would sleep all day because I was so mentally exhausted because I faced that for so long. And and it because I put on that cape, uh, it led to a lot of growth. If I would have never had the strength to put that on, I wouldn't have grown like I have, and I wouldn't have grown into the person I am today. And that's I look back at a lot of things and I go, I'm glad those things happened because that's why I am who I am now.
Yes, everything happens for a reason, and everything we go through. I know you talked about like wanting to be a firefighter in your former life, and like I always believe things they work out the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I don't think that was meant. I'm confident I would have done very well at that, but I found my purpose.
Yeah,
I really did.
absolutely. And so you go from winning all these sales competitions for another company, right?
Yeah.
And how do you transition to wanting to start your own pest control? How did that happen?
Well, early on, I had even as a kid, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't really understand that. Like I could go through situation after situation where I was like, now looking back, I go, yeah, of course, I was going to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But back then, I didn't understand it. So I started coaching high school sports, and I started enjoying that a lot, and I started doing a lot of research on leadership, and and following specific leaders and developing my leadership style while stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm one of the biggest detractors from me actually taking a high school coaching position was that there was an awards banquet at the end of the year and I had to speak.
Oh, wow. You're like,
Uh,
no.
which is hilarious now because I do that all the time. It's not that I don't get terrified by it. It's just I face it. It's just who I am now. I moved into a leadership position because my leadership skills were growing through coaching. I moved into a leadership position with a company, and very quickly I took a position in the Bay Area to take on a branch that was not doing very well at all.
Mhm.
I was kind of like a pioneer, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna take this on. I thought there'd be a lot of resources and support and like kind of a
It was,
checklist even
yeah,
of
yeah.
anything. And
You
I
just
kept,
thrown into the wolves. Here you
yeah, I was just
go.
kind of thrown into the fire. And at first I'm like, like what, like why would they do that? And then I went, okay, well, these are the rules I'm playing by. This is the situation. I'm going to become very resourceful. I'm going to figure it out. So I went all in and I figured it all out. And I didn't figure it all out because you never figure it all out.
Mhm.
But I figured a lot of things out. I started developing my own culture. We developed
Mhm.
our own core values, our own mission statement. They didn't
Wow.
have this really for the company, so I developed it within my branch. And within 3 years, we became the biggest branch in the entire company.
Oh,
And then I just led it like a sports team.
yeah.
It's like I was very passionate
So
about
you
sports.
had, like, taken over like it was already your own.
Yes, I just took extreme ownership of it
Yeah.
and unhealthy level of ownership of
But
it.
then that also, I'm sure the light went on and you're
Yes.
like, "Ding, ding, ding. Why am I not doing this for myself?"
Well, I started going because, like growing up poor and you're not seeing anybody start businesses or
Right.
anything like that. You're like, you think there's this bigger barrier out there to entry. And really there isn't. It's what's here that's holding you back.
And that's why I'm sorry, I just have to say, that's what this whole podcast is like, going all in, like, and people not coming from backgrounds, not believing that they could do something and build something for themselves, or just like general not believing in themselves and
Yeah.
the greatness that the abilities they have in them. And that's why I love to share these stories so much because, just exactly like you said, you didn't have that growing up. You didn't even know how to like utilize those that. And that's why I hope that people hear these stories and feel inspired and like, you know what? Josh, did that and did that, really
Yeah.
did that, and that's why it's so important. So sorry, just
I think
really
it's really important to tell these stories because I didn't hear these stories as a kid, and had I, maybe I'd be further along. But I don't regret the path I'd taken.
no, yeah.
But I felt like I had this iron ceiling. It might as well have been 15 feet
Mhm.
thick. But
Exactly.
really, once you poke at it, you're like, oh, it's paper. Oh,
Yes.
wait a minute, there's more out here, and you pull all that open, and you're like, wow. And I've said as I've learned this myself, if I can inspire anybody in life with any aspect of anything I've learned it's that. It's like we hold ourselves back, you know?
It is absolutely all mindset. That's all I always talk about, like, how do you pass the bar? How do it's not that I'm smart, it's the mindset of, like, "I'm gonna do this, and okay, then what do I need to do?" I tell that all the time. It's so important to have the right mindset to achieve any it doesn't matter in what area, what career, where anything we're doing in our life, right?
Yeah. And
And,
why not you?
yeah, exactly. So what was that go all in moment? Why not you? Like, what was that like? You were building this for this, and you probably weren't getting the recognition, right? For a branch that
N-
you
no, they were actually starting. There were different people in corporate taking credit for some of the growth where I was very intentional in like we're going to hone in this piece of marketing, we're going to hone in this, and I so Um, I'm and, the company was going in a different direction, which wasn't necessarily wrong. It just didn't as my vision as I was realizing I was this strong visionary, and I had these very strong feelings on how something should be operated. Um, I went, "That's not wrong, but it doesn't align with what I want." So I started having these tough conversations with myself in the mirror, It's like because I was finding myself frustrated, and I go, "Wait a minute. I can make a decision about this. I'm the one making the choice to be here and be frustrated. I can either accept that that's the way it is and go all in there, or make a decision that's going to lead me in a different direction and I can follow that passion." And I was scared, I was really scared. A friend of mine had started a business earlier and he was doing okay, doing all right with it. And he kept telling me, do it, do it, do it. Well, um, you know, I I raised 3 kids, right? And,
at a young age,
at a
that's
very young age.
yeah.
Well, I finally had a biological child, and I
Mhm.
had waited a lot of years for this. I mean, I always wanted it, but I didn't feel like that we were in a position to where I could bring a 4th kid into the family,
Mhm.
and it not harm the other kids financially and what my obligations were there. So I had my daughter Dixie, and she was born. And very shortly after, we found out she had a heart condition, and I'm already going through all these frustrations with everything else. I'm like I was operating in an unhealthy way the way I was leading there, just giving too much. And I
Not
said,
sustainable.
yeah. And so I'm in the hospital and I asked like work, like, hey, I don't take any time off. I literally took no time, no vacations, anything. And I go, which isn't healthy. And I said, look, have somebody cover for me. I need to be there for the week with my daughter while she heals. And they go, okay. So I, one of the most difficult moments of my life was wheeling my daughter down to the anesthesiologist to be knowing that she's going to go on a bypass machine and she's going to have open heart surgery. And it's like they tell you she's gonna be okay, but,
Uh,
hear stories and, um, fortunately for her, it was a very successful surgery, and I talked to the doctor, and afterwards, I wanted to look him in the eye, and I go, "How did the surgery go?" And he shook my hand, and he goes, "If I had to bet on anybody, I'd bet on her and that that operation right there." And maybe he tells everybody that, but for me, that meant the world,
Yeah.
so I had to wait a couple days to hold her, and, holding her for the first time was magical, but I will tell you, when you're looking at the possibility of losing your child, surgery, and having this heart condition and everything, and when they said, "Dad, okay, you can hold your baby girl," and that was more powerful than the very first moment I ever held her, and, so I'm holding her, and I'm just feeling all this joy and all this emotion, and my phone starts vibrating, and out of instinct, I start going, "Oh, I need to set her down somewhere so I can answer this," and, it was my fault, I brought my work phone with me,
Mhm.
and then I just went, "Whoa, wait a minute," and I just kinda looked down at her, and I literally spoke out the words. I looked down at her, and at that moment, I said, if I'm gonna give at this level, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it for you," and I looked down at her, and I go, "I'm gonna do this for you. I'm gonna build a legacy for you." And, that moment, I called my friend, and I was like, "Hey, I'm all in. I'm making the change." And at that moment, every step forward was towards starting a business.
That's so magical, like, I hear you tell that, and there's just that moment where, like I said, the light bulb goes on and, like, the way you tell that, I could hear your voice just changing, and, like, kids will do that to you, like, why would we do this to build the future for someone else's kids?
Yeah.
That's what went through my mind, like, 'cause I had a similar experience where, I worked for an attorney and I'm like, "Well, what?" Like, like, I'd always, like, you wanted to knew that I wanted to have my own firm, but I thought it was always gonna be, like, 30 years into it after you pour your heart and soul, and then, something your mind tells you you have to put in that many in order to be good enough to do your own thing,
Yeah.
right? But it's not like that, and so, now I have a similar, experience of, like, man, like, why am I doing this to build someone else's dream and not have a purpose of my own and like build my own dream and have my own legacy? So it's just beautiful. Obviously, because I met Dixie as well and know a lot about that story. And I hope we'll get to that a little bit more. So you start, okay, so it's a scary moment, right? You're holding your newborn daughter and you're like, let's do this. I mean, like, okay, like, it's not easy to start a business. You can't just be like, "I'm gonna start my own pest control company, and there's gonna be a book of clients for you."
Yeah.
How
And
was
I
that
think
like?
it was so my friend had started a company, so I decided to partner with him first
Okay.
because that felt safer.
Yeah.
And he had a couple partners, and it just went south very quickly.
Mhm.
It went south very quickly, and it was like another situation where I have to be the visionary. I feel so strongly about, culture and what, culture can come in so many forms, but I felt so strongly in what I've envisioned a culture being. And it didn't align with that. So they dissolved the company and I go to start my own, and my buddy's like, "Hey, like, I wanna start with you, like, I believe in you, like, I absolutely believe in you," and I go, "The only way this is gonna work is if I'm completely in charge of the vision. I'm completely in charge of the direction of the company," and he goes, "I can do that." He goes, I will champion everything that you say," and he has. So it works, and a lot of business relationships don't. And not
Okay.
that we haven't had our rocky times, because
Yeah.
it's just like a marriage. If
Absolutely.
it's perfect, you're probably not pushing yourself enough.
Yeah.
Like, you're not pushing each other. But so made those steps, had to rush into it at this point because I had left the company. When over here, this dissolves overnight.
Mhm.
Now I'm left with, like, what the heck am I going to do? So we're scrambling and putting everything together. And I already had an idea of, like, color scheme. I did a
Wow.
lot of research on marketing while I was at the other company. And it was kind of funny because when I was there, I was reading a book on marketing, and one of their people up in the corporate office saw that on my desk, and they're like, "What's that?" I go, "Oh, I'm reading this book on marketing." And they go, "Why?" And I go, "Why wouldn't I? I want to understand every aspect of this
Mhm.
business so I can help it grow." So I had all these ideas that I was already noting down, like, I wanted.
Mhm.
So when it was time, I mean, there's detail in every single piece of our business, right down to the superhero
Yeah.
was right. That was put together right from the get go. The yin and yang in our logo. The color scheme represents specific things and
Mhm.
targets specific type of
Yeah.
mindset. because we want to be with people who align with the direction we're going.
Mhm.
Um, so I had to hustle through all that and scramble to put everything together. So it was kind of like it was like a shotgun start. And at that point, so I had built up that team pretty big at the previous company before I left that company in the Bay Area. And that was hard to step away from. I love those people. I built that team. I built that culture. I had the vision for it and everything. And I was starting to feel like really fulfilled as a leader. Like I was putting these pieces in place and I was starting to feel like, oh, now I'm in a spot where I can really strategize and
Yeah.
all that with limitations because I'm working for somebody else. So I wanted to get back to that as quickly as possible with the new rules, which were mine.
Yeah.
You know, if I was going to screw it up, it was my fault. If it did well, it was my fault.
Yeah.
Like so I was ready to take ownership of all of that. And so I wanted to get there as fast as possible. So, we were very aggressive in the beginning, just getting aggressive but friendly,
Mhm.
getting in front of the right people and getting people to take a chance on us. We're a new company.
Yeah.
And so we targeted like property management and because in the residential sector, like you either knock doors
Yeah.
and grow that way. And you know, I've never experienced that, and that's very uncomfortable for me. So I went, you know what? I'm going to prospect these multifamily properties. I'm going to walk in, have personality, let them know how much we care, and then kind of change that whole part of the industry. Because like locally, most of the pest companies they didn't dabble. They didn't wanna do property management. They didn't wanna
Mhm.
do multifamily because 'cause you're dealing with tenants and roaches and bed bugs and difficult people and all that, and we found a way to navigate that and navigate people and have systems in place that
Mhm.
made all that flow, and we took all the work off of the managers.
You
So
found something in the market that no other pest control company wanted to do, and you, like, took it in and you perfected and made it work for you guys, right? That's
yes.
so amazing.
So it was like a blue ocean for us.
Yeah.
So we did that and we did very well. And our goal was like, if we get in and get one property, we're going to win them over so much they want to give us every property they have. And we did that. And so we grew our first million, we did very quickly for industry standards.
Yeah.
And but COVID hits and we got to make some adjustments. You can't get in front of
Mm.
any of these managers. So we started
Mhm.
shifting to residential. And then residential like did extremely well. But during that whole time we were building like our presence in the community and like we were working on like our social marketing media reach, all of that.
Mhm.
And so it was kind of priming everything for that moment. And then we could burst into the residential scene real heavily. And I love residential because we get to, who cares about their property more than a homeowner, so you're dealing with them. So it's a different kind of connection.
Mhm.
So we really enjoyed that and we've grown tremendously in that area.
What would you say was, like, the biggest challenge that you've had so far, since you started Pest Pro?
Um,
One of the biggest. I know there's been many.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is like I don't come from a financial background, and I've had to learn a lot there. And you know, we're having some success, and we're like 4 or 5 years in business, and we move into this nice new building, and you know, we're starting to
Happens to
spend a
everybody.
little bit more for marketing and branding and be awareness and all that. And we move, and there was some issue with the forwarding of the mail. We were already struggling on the accounts receivable side. So we had a toxic person come into a role there, and turns out they weren't doing a lot of work, and they were doing a lot of damage behind the scenes with
Mhm.
clients, coworkers. So as all that's unraveling, our financial issues start unraveling. All of a sudden, we were a couple hundred behind, 100,000 behind on our accounts receivable,
Wow.
and then we're not getting mail. Like we're not getting mail, and we're calling the post office. We're talking to
Yeah.
the postmaster, all this stuff.
Where are my checks?
Yeah. Nobody knows where our checks are. And all of a sudden, we're another 300,000 down. We're like 500,000 behind. And I'm looking at payroll going, we're 5 years in business. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make payroll,
Mhm.
you know? Because the way we built it is like we reinvested, reinvested. We didn't have this big savings. That savings was getting drained by,
Mhm.
the deficit we were already filling. And next thing you know, like I hadn't got mail for like 4 weeks. And you know, thank God we had some stuff on, ACH and stuff like
Yes.
that. Or if somebody called and said they were returning checks too. if they called and said that it was returned, we're like, I'll send a guy over to go get it
Yeah,
right
we're
now.
picking that thing up.
Yeah, seriously. And some of these jobs we do will do like a big bird exclusion and it might be $80,000, and if
Yeah.
$80,000 check goes
Mhm.
back,
Yeah.
we need that. So navigating through that, and it's like I'm telling my finance person, like, okay, don't pay that. We'll hold off on that. Don't pay me, but pay them.
Yeah.
And we're like, even then, we're like, we don't have enough for payroll. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to go out and get a loan. And then all of a sudden we got a stack of checks
Yeah.
and we're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Woo!
thank God. And I was like, I don't
Prayers
ever,
answered.
yeah. And, I expect to have some of those issues earlier on, but
Yeah.
5 years in business, I didn't expect that at all. So,
And thank you for sharing that because I think it's so important as well as we tell these stories of like success. Like we have to share the true knit and grit hard parts because then people go on, they think it's just a linear road, like,
yeah,
okay, I'm going all in, things are gonna be great. No, I always talk about it, it's up and down, like even after so many years. So you've been in business for 10, close to 10 years? Eh,
almost 8.5 years.
Yes, and you're starting to feel good and like getting your roll on, you're like, I'm good. And then things happen. Like it's always something's always gonna happen as a business owner.
It's always something. I had to
Always.
call you recently for
Yeah.
some help with some referrals
I
for
have to
some
call
legal
my
stuff.
attorneys,
Yeah.
so thank you for sharing that because like I said, like these stories, we can't just talk about the good things, right?
Yeah.
Because the bad things or the challenges, let's just say, are really real, and you have to, be able to handle it.
Yeah, and all in means all in. It means you're all in all the time. It doesn't mean that you just went all in and everything's solved. It means, oh, I got to go all in on that and that and that
Yep,
and that.
absolutely, and
It's your issue.
it is absolutely. So like with all the luxuries and benefits of, having your own business, having being the visionary, doing things the way you want, you also carry so much burden with it. But like you said, we talked about like the mindset. Like if you have that mindset that I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna find a way, I'm going all in, I'm going to do this. And there's no way that there's no challenge, obstacle, issue that, you're not gonna be able to figure it out, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes they take longer than others. Some hang around a little bit more,
a
and
little
you'd be a little
different
bit more.
route maybe.
But it always, I think it's like goes back to that mindset of like, and your reason why, like your
Mhm.
purpose. How are you gonna be like, I can't get through this? My purpose is so
You're gonna go
strong.
home and tell your kids like, "Sorry, couldn't do it."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. When you have a strong purpose, it's gonna carry you through.
Yeah. Well, and purpose changes when you start to have some success. Like, I know
Mm.
you experienced that and you've shared that.
Yeah. I do
But
want to talk about that now too, since
yeah, it's like, like that's where we got to work together was through giving back. And,
yeah.
as giving back was a core value of ours. And I didn't feel like my team was all in on it, honestly.
Mhm,
And last year, I was like, we're going all in on this. And I started getting more involved. We gave back in a lot of ways, but we're
mhm,
like, no, we're not just doing these little things. When we get
mhm.
involved in something, we're going all in. So we did a toy drive with the United Way,
Yes, I
and we
remember that.
filled a U-Haul, 26-foot U-Haul
Oh, I
with
remember
bikes and
that.
all kinds of stuff. And my team, that was the first time I saw my whole team go,
Eh,
like, all right, we're getting behind this.
I remember that because I was following you, and then I would see, like, the first post was like, "Oh, doing backpack drive," and then, like, was a month later, it went from a bin to, like, you said, like, this U-Haul, big old
Yeah.
U-Haul, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
It was getting
amazing."
crazy, and it's funny, it was like when that ended, I go, "Okay, now I can focus on the business," because it
Yeah.
was like, it
No,
fueled me.
no, because that was December, and then I hit you up, was it when did I, like, a couple months later,
Yeah, it wasn't long
it was a
after
couple months,
that,
like
and you're
February or something,
like,
right when the campaign started for
yeah, and you're
American Heart Association. Yeah, so, we were talking about how you and I have gotten to know each other on a different level, and I think that really did show me who you are, like, how big your heart is, and it meant so much because, you know, there's there's so many, businesses and leaders out there, and not everyone has that kind of a heart, and that's true and genuine, that just
true and
about giving
genuine.
back, right? Like some people do it for a different reason, right? So when I had asked Josh to be my team member, now this campaign was called the Women Go Red campaign. And man, as me and you were just connecting, I was like, "Oh, I really wish you could be my team." I was like, "Hey, can I have a guy join my team?" I was like, "I know it's a women's campaign, but I'm the leader." And they were like, of course. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have the perfect guy. And that was you. And oh my gosh, like, not only did you just like hit it out of the park, like you were like pretty much leading me at times. And I tell you that because there were days when I was like, oh my goodness. And you were just this energy, like, we're going, let's go. What can we do? And I love that because it's like we were feeding off of each other.
We were. That was so much fun. I mean, honestly, so, 2 reasons behind that, like, my daughter, with her heart condition, when
Hmm.
you reached out to me about that, I was like, "Yeah, of course, that's something I can really get behind." But the other was, you gave so much to me when I reached out to you, or when I got connected with you about
Hmm.
marketing,
Yeah.
that I was like, "If Anna ever needs anything from me, the only way I can repay it is like, I'm just gonna go all in whatever she needs." And it was that. So I got my daughter, who I'm super passionate about, and she's the reason I started the company and my
Hmm.
purpose for pushing this thing forward. And then you reach out about that. Of course, I'm gonna go all in. So it was really cool for me because I lead a big group and I always got to be the guy,
Yeah.
like I always have to be the person, and I
Hmm.
love that. But this was an opportunity. I speak to my team so much about being a peer leader
Yeah.
and leading peer to peer
Hmm.
level. That's what make teams really powerful. So I
Hmm.
go, I get an opportunity to be a teammate, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be the best damn teammate I can possibly be for
And
Ann.
you were, I'm telling you, everybody, I was just like, wow. I mean, you even got an award, like a national award for being the highest, like, gross, like, right?
Yeah, I was team member
For
of the
team
year
member
for
of the
like the
year,
most
national.
raised. Yeah, that
I
was
mean,
kind of
okay,
cool.
so let's drop the ball, over $60,000, right?
Yes.
Like that you raised, and so amazing for such a good cause.
But
So,
together we were able to raise what, $230,000,
oh my goodness, we
and
did it.
you
It was so amazing.
yeah.
But I mean, and that just goes back to like that's like a leadership thing as well, right? It goes back to your passion and
Yeah.
purpose, right? And like I said, I've shared like now we meet you meet a certain level of like, okay, I made it, certain level of success, and it's like, what is more out there? Like, is this? What's the purpose for all this success?
Yeah.
And so like doing something like that just told like and sharing it with you was and knowing that together. Well, and our other teammates as well. We're making such a big dent in the world, and like I think that it's just we need to spread that and do more of that.
Absolutely. If we can inspire more people to do that, great. Open their hearts to it. I certainly saw that in my team. I've never been like a big, like, I'm not like into cars. I'm not into like a whole lot.
You're into
Honestly,
helping
I'm
people.
into helping people. And that this is
Absolutely.
so I was starting to, okay, my life was changing. We were having this success. I could eat wherever I want,
Yeah.
have the nicest steak dinner or
Yeah.
whatever. And like and you're eating it. And you might like I'd be okay with a hamburger at home, you
Right.
know? Um, and then you're just not feeling as fulfilled, and then you pour your heart into something like that, and you're like, "Wow, okay, I found it. I found
Mhm.
it. Now with all of our success, I could do more of this." So it's
Yes.
like, like, I have a whole new level of drive because I found that,
Yes.
and I'm helping other people find that, which you've done. You inspired that in me, and you've inspired that in so many people. It's
But I think and that's what I say, like, you think that you know your purpose, and you very well do, but then it's something bigger too, right?
yes,
Yeah, and it's amazing because I think that that's what the world needs right now. I keep
it
talking
certainly
about
does.
it certainly does, especially as we there's so many uncertain times, and it's like, if we can all just slow it down and go to like basics of just like caring for each other in the simplest way. It doesn't have to be big. And I always talk about that. It doesn't have to be, donating a huge amount of money or time or anything. It could be in small ways. And I've seen you do that in like so many different ways. So that's why I was just we connect together in so many levels. And so thank you for being that for our community. Um Real quick, I do want to talk about just kind of how we met because I think it's important and a collaboration and how you kind of influence others with, when you get to a level, then you got to share, right? You got
Yeah,
to like share
absolutely.
your knowledge, share whatever you know. Cause so you came to me and you had some questions about, advertising and billboards. And, um, and we met through a mutual friend. And I think you were surprised that like I would even say yes.
Yeah.
And we met, and I think, you summed it up as, "Oh, it'll be like a 15-minute conversation,"
Yes.
and we ended up talking for an hour and a half, right? Like, you were
Yeah.
in my office, and I was like, "Let me see," and I was just, so intrigued by your story. And, so what I wanna talk about that was just like I said, passing on the torch and like, like whatever I learned, I wanna help everybody, and like, you and I see you do the same, so it's that effect, right? Ripple
Yes.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I reached out to a friend and I was talking to him about marketing. And I go, I want to go guerrilla with it. And he goes, what do you mean? And I was like, the only person I could think of is Ann Fong. And he's all, I know Ann Fong. And he goes, she has the same heart as you. He goes, if I reach out to her, I guarantee she'll want to meet with. So I thought, he said, hey, like he ran into you by chance the next day in an
Uh-huh.
elevator at the Kings game and goes, hey, I ran into Ann Fong like right after that.
Happen everything happens for a
Yeah, and
reason.
I was like, "Wow." And then you're like so we set up a lunch, and then I think you were like we're sitting at the restaurant down the street from your office, and
Yes.
you were something came up, and you were like, we got a call," and it's like by one of your assistants is like, "Oh, Ann wants you to come over here."
Mhm.
And we're like I was like, "Oh, okay. She's gonna give me like 15 minutes, but
Mhm.
I'll take it." And, just it was better that it was there because it was in private room with us 3, and you just poured like, you listened to my story, and then you just poured I mean, you just laid it all out there, like, and you opened up different things that I didn't think were necessarily available for me
Mhm.
just yet. You made it more real for me, and,
Mhm.
like and then we just connected on all of that, and, I mean, it was probably an hour and a half.
Yeah, and, like,
And
that's, like, kind of the beauty like, that was, like, the beginning of, you know, our relationship, right?
yeah,
Our friendship, and, like, at that time, I didn't know the simple gesture of just I was just trying to help you because I was like, "Hey, it's cool. This guy wants to do marketing. I know a little bit about that, so I'm gonna
yeah,
help him out. I'm gonna pay my dues." And then here we are, a year or so later doing this big partnership with the American Heart Association, and, like, I just can't imagine the future, like, what else we're gonna do together.
yeah,
But isn't it but that's what I'm saying. It goes back to just kind of like the basic kindness and just being a good person and just wanting to help somebody with no expectation,
yeah.
you know?
And
Wanting
because of
nothing in
that, I've been
return.
able to pass a lot of that along. And a matter of fact, the guy so you had a pest issue at your house
Yes,
that your current provider couldn't because they didn't handle that
and
specific
that's
type
what
of
I want to
pest.
mhm.
And then, so you asked me to come take a look at it, and
Yes,
we found a creative way to resolve it. And, that guy ended up being upset, and somebody from his office
yes.
called because
Mhm,
you had canceled the service and moved forward with us. And I ended up on and somebody had called from the office, and they were kinda upset about it
mhm,
all, and, I got on the phone with him, and he goes, "Well, are you, like, the local, like, branch manager?" And I go, "No, I'm the president of the company." He goes, "Whoa, wait a minute," because at this point, he had seen our billboards, and he had seen us
mhm.
around a lot, and he thought we were this big national company. He goes, "Wait a minute, you're not a big national company?" I go, "No, we're not." And we started talking more and more, and I go, "We're local," and he's local. And he goes, "How did you grow that kind of presence?" And I was like, I'm happy to talk to you about it and all that. So it went from him wanting us to reimburse him for some of his like bait stations
Yeah.
to, can I buy you lunch? And do you mind sharing more? And so I was like, yeah, I'll meet you for lunch, but I'm not going to let you buy lunch. So I bought lunch and we talked and talked and talked. And I've become like a mentor for him. And he was like, he had told me that he kinda got a little stagnant,
Yeah,
and he was a younger guy, very ambitious, and he'd done very well,
yeah.
but he had hit, like, a little bit of a plateau, and
Mhm.
that's where you're really tested. It's what you do when these plateaus hit is what's gonna separate you from the rest, and we had a conversation, and he's like so he set some additional goals, and then he contacted me a few months later and updated me on it. And he goes, "Thank you so much for that conversation. I have this, this, and this in place now." And a matter of fact, we're meeting for lunch here in a couple weeks, but we talk regularly. And he actually refers business over my way when he doesn't handle it. But and I've just become this resource for him now. If he needs something, I help him.
And you told me he did a big donation
He
for
did.
I just
Yes.
love that.
He's
That's
one
such
of the first people to give when I reached out.
And that's the kind of, like, wildfire, like, spreading of, like, like, that I'm talking about, like and just for you saying, "Hey, I'm gonna sit down and talk to this guy." Now you've brought him up, and then he's full circle, turns around and donates, like, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How the universe works, and, isn't it crazy?
It is crazy. So, and since then, I've been on a few podcasts and I've mentioned that, and a few people have reached out, and I've been able to help more people.
That's so amazing. Oh, man, I'm just so touched, and I would love to just leave it at there. Like, seriously, the notion of just paying it forward and,
Yeah.
when becoming a leader and your beautiful story and how it just keeps rolling and spreading.
So I have a piece. So I've always said that. After I learned this, I've said that. So the moment I learned that, I started saying this is that you're not really a leader until you've created other leaders. And I feel
I
like
like
in
it.
entrepreneurship, when you have success, you have a responsibility, just like you would as a leader to build other leaders. I think you need to help build other entrepreneurs in your community. Um,
I love that.
and
Uh,
that brings everyone together. And then when you have these campaigns and giving back,
yeah.
you've got more resources available for
Yes.
those kind of things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I spend a lot of time just like trying to mentor like people who say, "Oh, internships or just, hey, I want to go to law school." And everyone thinks, I mean, oh, she's too busy. And they'll say that in their email. I know you're busy, but can you? And they get so surprised when I say, yeah, you know what? I want to show you what a law firm, like they're high school students. They've
Yeah,
never even stepped foot, or only seen Suits or something, or TV and what a lawyer does. And so I'll bring them in and stuff. But that stuff, inspiring them and like trying to like cultivate them like, in that way is always, it means so much to me. And it's sometimes I spend more time doing that than and you know how it is. It's like, "Oops, I gotta go back to doing some lawyer
yeah.
work."
I don't know how you do what you do. I know I was like, do you practice witchcraft or something? Because you were like everywhere. Oh, it's
Yes, but so
amazing.
are you. So,
Yeah,
and that's, and that leads it to, wrapping up that story, you were talking about like what someone that has thought of you as a competitor, right?
yeah,
And it's not even that like at this level, for me, I don't see other law firms as my competition and not as a dig. I see it as this like a greater level of like, dude, I'm just doing me, right? And like if
yeah.
I can help you like collaborate, it's at that level you're not, I don't want to say petty, but you don't think of competition. Like, of course, there's people, that are doing the same thing as you. But like I don't wish anybody ill will, and if they,
Yeah.
if anyone was to ever need them, I'm happy to help. And that's exactly what you did. So oh, it's so beautiful. Okay. So thank you for that. But I do want to have a moment where we have a little fun, and it's called Go All In or Fold. And I will show you these photos or talk about these concepts. And if you're in, you're down with it, you go all in. If you're like, no, don't ever do that, you fold. Okay. All right. So killing fleas with Dawn dish soap. Are you all in with that? Oh,
It can work.
it can work. Okay.
Yeah.
But
I think there's plenty of reason to call in a professional. There's small
fold on that.
situations.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say
you
fold, yeah.
gotta call Pest Pro. Oh,
Yeah,
by the way, I do have to say this. Sorry. And this is not just a plug. Like I don't lie. Like, your service, because we use you for several things, not just that one issue, our month issues and some other, things. And you guys really are amazing. And so, like, I mean that, like, I wouldn't say that. Like, I mean, there's such a big
appreciate that.
difference. And so, I can tell that the company's led by a great leader. You guys take the time. I get text messages. And they're like, "Hey, can we come see? Is this convenient? Can we reschedule? Thank you." And I'm just like, "Wow, all this from pest for control." Like people don't think of that way, and it just shows.
Yeah.
So I want to just say, like, and then go check out the reviews. Amazing reviews. And how many 5-star reviews do you have?
Well, between all the locations in Sacramento, I think we have like 3,500 5-star. The
3,500
the thing about
5-star.
that though is like we don't have one-star reviews,
No.
like there's a
Yeah.
couple like bogus ones on there,
Yeah.
but if you look at some
You're just
companies, you
great.
see like 200 of them,
Right.
but they still have a 5-star rating. We have a 5-star with like 2 out
3.
there.
I know, and that's how amazing you are. Back to, the game. Okay, so, okay, electric fly swatters. All in on those or fold?
I'm gonna say fold.
Fold.
You'll kill some flies, but you're not getting to the source. Same with the flea issue. You got to get to the source.
You gotta get to the source, okay, and that's why you need professional help. Alright. Okay, and then we have, okay, so that's kind of the same line, we won't do that. Okay, fake one. Here we go. If, all in if someone calls you when they see a king cobra in their yard. Are you all in on that or like call the next guy?
Oh, I hate snakes. We're gonna figure it out. We will figure it
You will
out.
figure it out. I
Yes,
love that.
because it's somebody in need.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like if you can't help them, you're gonna help find someone that can help them,
Yes,
right? Like the snake catcher and all that.
absolutely.
And then okay, there's been a lot of this happening in the news. But would you go into a swamp infested with alligators? All in on that or no? Are you
No,
taking
no.
the risk?
I'm
No.
not I'm not taking the risk there. I'll leave that to Fish and Game.
All right. That's the end of our game. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If this conversation resonated with you, please leave a review and take a second to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you know someone who's building something of their own, share this with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear right now. I'm Ann Fong. Thanks for listening to Go All In, Beating the Odds in Business.